Hello once again, people. Here is the Marti Marziali. Tonight we will talk about Jeet Kune Do. Once again, this is the fourth time, if I'm not wrong, that we talk about Jeet Kune Do. We have a special guest, but I want to introduce this guest. In 1994, I was in LA, in Los Angeles. I was collecting stuff for my thesis at university. I went to Burbank at Unique Publication Mother House to buy some stuff to write my thesis university. I also went to Santa Clarita O'Hara Publication. And there was a guy, he was from Japan. He gave me some advice what to buy. And this guy told me, oh, you gotta buy this book. And tonight we will talk about a book, and we will talk about this book with the same author of this other book. We have with us Sifu Christopher Kent.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Welcome. Welcome to Marti Marziali. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here. Same here.
So. Sifu Kent, first of all, I would like to ask you, what's the title of your new book?
Oh, okay. The title is Liberate Yourself, How to Think Like Bruce Lee.
Okay. Is it about philosophy, or there are also some techniques and photographs and stuff like that?
No, there is no photographs. It's not a technique book. Just brief history. I had wanted to do this book for probably 30 years or more. I had been gathering notes and what I learned and gleaned from my training, but for me it had always been about how do we take what we've learned from the philosophy that Bruce put forward, from the mental strategies, the thought processes that he used. Can they apply to each of us? And if so, can we use them and take them out into our daily life, the arena that every one of us steps in every day? That's the arena of life. So I had been wanting to do it for years, and I'd written things about it, and I was up here in Boise, Idaho, and at that time, my good friend John Little was up here as well with his family, and we were working on things for the Bruce Lee Educational Foundation. So we would have these mammoth talks about philosophy, Bruce's art, the science, and he knew I'd been looking at this book, and he just turned to me one day, he goes, Chris, you got to do it. You've got to do it now. So that was kind of like the the kick in the behind that I needed. So I did it. But again, it's not how to think like Bruce Lee in terms of thinking the same thoughts as Bruce Lee, because as I said, that's impossible. Okay, it's simply to share the philosophical insights. As Bruce developed this revolutionary non-restrictive martial arts that we know as Jeet Kune Do, he simultaneously evolved this non-restrictive philosophy of life and living life, and the two intertwine. So that had been my goal, and that had been the idea of, okay, yeah, so what does using no way as way mean? How do we take that? How can each of us apply that to ourselves, to our life, to our relationships, or any of those? So that is how the book came about. And again, all my other books have been technical books. So they're Jeet Kune Do, but again, as John referred to this as my magnum opus. He said, "This is your book." So that's how it came about. But it came from my years and my relationships with Linda and Dan and everybody. So
who's the editor? John Little?
No, actually, I self-published the book through Amazon.
Okay.
John was polite enough. Both John and Taki, Kimura, both wrote forwards for the book for me. So I'm very happy for that. I sent Linda a copy of it before or right when it was published, and she sent me some amazing comments regarding it, and has spoken publicly about it, and so yeah, that's my book.
Okay. How long did it take to write it?
Well, again, as I said, I had been making notes and ideas for years and years. When I sat down and wrote it, it probably took me about 5 to 6 months
Okay.
of just, bringing it into the flow of where I wanted and how I wanted it to go. Because at the same time I did that, I created a workbook to go along with it, so that somebody who's reading the book, there's a workbook, a resource guide that they can use, that has action worksheets for them to explore themselves and find out things for themselves, and about themselves. So the two books kind of work in conjunction. So I did them both at the same time.
Okay. Do you have a copy with you right now?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
show us?
Sure. Hold on a second. So, okay. So that's the. Where's it going? Oh, there. Sorry.
You chose the cover, right?
And then, yes.
Amazon, I think you can choose everything.
Yeah, and then this is the workbook that goes with it. The cover has very specific meaning for me, and why I chose it carefully. So if I can kind of hold it up, and if you look at it, obviously there's a silhouette of Bruce, right?
Yeah, the statue, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on one side you have Hong Kong, okay, which has the Chinese junk, and on the other side you have Seattle, and you have the ocean between them, and Bruce is a bridge between Hong Kong and Seattle.
East and West.
Yes, so he was a synthesis of East and West, and he was a bridge between the East and the West. So that's how I came up with the idea of the cover of the book. So.
Okay. That's a nice argument. I would like to ask you if you think Bruce Lee was more on the east side or on the west side, or he was a total mix.
I would say a synthesis. Yes, a synthesis, because he obviously, growing up in China as a child, he was influenced by, again, Taoism, Zen, whatever, or he had so he had Eastern sensibilities. But then when he came to America, he became very Western. So yeah, to me, it's very much a synthesis. And that's, even Eastern has some Western pragmatism in it, and Western has some Eastern philosophy. So again, it's this melding, and the yin yang, if you will, and the combination of things. So
it's typical because we can find some things that we can say. For example, Alan Watts, yes, he's from the West, he's English,
right,
but his thought is totally influenced also by the Chinese philosophy and by Zen.
yes.
So there are some are in the mix, and some other are totally American. We can say it's totally American, like also the positive thinking that he started to read.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I agree. Again, it goes back to that idea about, you don't restrict yourself to one or the other, Eastern, Western, modern. So yes, he drew from everybody, psycho-cybernetics, self-help psychology, Carl Rogers. Yes.
I gave that book to so many people, the Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz.
Yes.
I went in 1995. I was in the army and I was reading at night that book. I gave that book as a present to so many people. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Bruce Lee inspired me to read about psychology and philosophy. Carl Rogers, you were saying Carl Rogers, and Gyula Denesh, Napoleon Hill, Maxwell Maltz, so many.
Yeah.
How do you think that Jeet Kune Do was influenced by all this stuff?
Well, I think the thing that a lot of people miss is, sometimes you hear just this quote. You hear, the root of Jeet Kune Do is Wing Chun, right? That's a statement. I mean, we're not going to discuss it right now, but you hear the root of Wing Chun. I mean, the root of Jeet Kune Do is Wing Chun, but the root of Jeet Kune Do was Bruce Lee. It was his mind, because
Yep.
his mind informed everything that he did with regards to martial arts. You see, so when sometimes people say that, I think, again, the philosophical foundations, that's why they're so important. The philosophical understandings create the foundation upon which Jeet Kune Do is built, which still separates it from a lot of, for want of a better term, mixed martial arts, hybrid martial arts. Is there's a very, very clear um, philosophical base, and again, it's not this concretized. You can only do this. That's the thing about it. The Jeet Kune Do is a dynamic, living, breathing martial art, and the philosophy is a living, breathing, dynamic martial art that goes with it.
Okay. Sifu Kent, how did you divide the chapters in your book? How do
Um,
you start to organize and say, okay, I have so many notes.
mhm,
How do I start in the beginning? How do
right,
I evolve my book in this way? And how do I conclude my books?
right. Well, what I did was I took fundamental, or what I call fundamental core principles. The idea of using no way as a way, having no limitation, be like water, and those became chapters. And so what I did was I broke the book into um, seven major or seven major principles. One being express your own unique potential. Another one being maintain an appetite for learning and discovery. And then under those, I would put chapters that related to them. For example, be willing to change with change, maintain a choiceless, pliable awareness. Those became core elements built around the major elements. You see, so it ended up with about, I think, 46 or 47 chapters. Um, Things like stepping out of your comfort zone is one.
Yeah.
Um, one dealing with developing laser-like focus of attention, focus of where you're directing your energy in moving towards your goals or your objectives. So I just did it that way, so that again, somebody can. The thing I wanted to do with this book is that you can pick the book up. You do not have to read it from beginning to end. You can grab the book and read any chapter. Some things,
Open randomly and start
yeah,
before sleeping, for example.
yeah,
I used some books like this.
yes, yeah. And maybe if you're experiencing a problem or an issue with something going on in your life, you grab the book and you might be thinking, well, God, I'm kind of really rigid in my thoughts and actions. Oh, let me look at Be Like Water, about maintaining fluidity of thought and action. And so that's the way I designed the book, and was so that, yeah, you can just pick it up, you can read a chapter or a page, and things like that. But what I also wanted to do was like when the section on preparing yourself, cultivating your tools and performance skills, developing your sense of timing and rhythm, was again, take my background from Jeet Kune Do, the again, developing timing uh, in a Jeet Kune Do perspective. Okay, how do we move that into this other avenue, so that it's like it's Jeet Kune Do, but it's just applied to other things.
Yep, yep. And regarding this, uh, I was thinking about the Jeet Kune Do besides the gym or
Uh-huh.
besides the physical aspect?
Hmm.
Stuff like the habit to close your eyes. You're watching TV, you close your eyes, and when the light changes in the TV, you give a punch.
Yes. Yes.
I knew also there was something like Bruce Lee was at the restaurant, and he used to call the vocal help
Uh-huh.
when someone brings the fork to the mouth up, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Is it
Yeah.
is it true?
Yes. Yes. It is. I've heard the story for many years since I first began training. That yeah.
Also, also training in front of the TV, watching Muhammad Ali, for example, and moving, imagining that he was another one of the opponents and move like that, watching the match, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Well, for example, the thing at the restaurant. Yeah, he would watch, right, and every time that they would pick up some food, he'd go like ah. And then what he would do is he would work on doing the up right before they picked it up,
Yeah.
so he would
Yep.
know what to move. Then
To
with
find the
Muhammad, yeah,
timing.
yeah. Then with Muhammad Ali, what he would do is he would get 8 millimeter films, and Muhammad Ali fought out of a left lead, and Bruce fought out of a right lead. So Dan explained to me what he would do is he would run the film so it showed on the wall, and then he would lay on the floor and hold a mirror like this. So when he looked in the mirror, he could see Muhammad Ali doing everything in a right lead. Yeah.
That's we in Italy we call it fever.
Uh,
When you got fever, it doesn't go away. You think about that all the time because
yes.
it's your biggest passion.
Yes. Yes.
So there's no easy way out to do that to that. You're just thinking about that all
Yeah.
the time. And is there also some kind of training for conditioning bones, knuckles?
Um, well, Bruce did all of this work for himself, and we have to go back to this thing because it gets moved apart when people talk about his art. Is that, and it's not being selfish,
Yeah,
but people need to understand that Bruce Lee was interested in one person, Bruce Lee. What he did to develop himself. So all of his training, he did work for, like people talk about the finger jab, right? The finger jab. And you hear people say, oh, it's never going to work. You're going to hurt your fingers. You have to develop the skills of using your fingers. So, hitting the leather strip, hitting into the sand or whatever, conditioning the hands. He did a lot of punching, even hitting his Wing Chun dummy with his hands. And again, if you see those pictures of him in those magazines, especially the European ones, you see those three knuckles really developed. You
yeah.
know, um, so I don't know. I've never seen anything in terms of like the like banging the arms, the blocking, things like that. But I do know that that's part of the reason for again, the Wing Chun dummy, because he would just explode through it and hit it. And he goes, so that when I hit the guy's arm, he goes, I'm just going to go right through his arm. So,
Did you write? Do you have a chapter in your book that speaks about all these outside the gym training, that you are at a restaurant with friends and you're still looking for a way to train and to get better and
um,
to
I do, but I don't approach it from that way. I approach it from kind of like what you were saying. What is your passion? What do and then how do you develop your passion? Because it might not be sitting watching somebody else, but developing your awareness. So
yeah,
whether it's the awareness of an opponent, whether it's the awareness of the the person you're in a relationship with at this moment, or you're at work, what is your awareness of those situations? It's done, like I said, it's done for that, and I use anecdotes regarding Bruce that I have grown up with, um, from either my teacher Dan Inosanto or by my good friend Linda Lee, because Linda and I get together once a month for coffee and just to talk. We've known each other for 50 years and our families. So I try again. I want to approach it that not telling them what to do, but giving them ideas or functioning as a catalyst for thought. Okay, so like you said, Bruce looked at the television and every time it changed. Okay, so can you come up with 3 things that you might be able to do that relate to you that build around that? You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And did you write something about the mental training with all the authors that Bruce Lee used to read? We were
Um,
talked about 5 minutes ago, all the mental training, uh, Krishnamurti also,
uh,
Norman Vincent Peale.
yeah. I talk about them in the book, and again, I can point people in that direction, but I didn't pull a bunch of quotes out from Jiddu Krishnamurti or Napoleon Hill, because I feel that then that's me trying to push that out on them. What
Okay,
I like to do is what you said, how
you
you
find
know,
yours. You
yeah,
find yours.
yeah, how Bruce, developed your thing of finding your own library and developing. He did the
Yeah,
same thing for me. Yeah, good. Find out about it. So it's again, it's much more about, like, I just want to do the same thing. I want to point the finger in that direction or the direction that they can go to find it and give them some signposts that can help them. But I don't want to give them a set path, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Some kind of bibliography with all the names and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Just some ideas
yes,
from one of them.
yeah.
I would like to ask you,
Mhm.
when you started in the 70s,
Yeah,
I think
73.
it was 71 you started.
No, it was June. I can tell you the exact date. It was June 3rd, 1973, 6 weeks before Bruce passed away.
Okay, okay. Did you have some background in martial arts at the time?
Yes, yeah. Um, I, I, Bruce ignited my love for martial arts when I was 11 years old and I saw the Green Hornet television
Yeah,
show. But didn't have the capacity to start. So I started training in judo and jujitsu at the Santa Monica YMCA when I was about 14 years old, and I did that for a couple of years, and then I did briefly. I started to do some Shotokan, and then I had a slight knee injury from playing football or soccer, as they call it over here, right? Um,
yeah.
and then when I went back to England, when I came back, I began training in 5 animal Kung Fu in Los Angeles, Chinatown, under Grandmaster Ark Y. Wong. So, and it's while I was there training with Ark Wong that I became involved and eventually got into Jeet Kune Do. So,
Okay, okay. I usually divide, maybe I'm wrong, but I usually divide the evolution of the Jeet Kune Do in
mm-hmm.
non-classical Kung Fu from Seattle,
Uh-huh.
then Junfan Kung Fu from the period of Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
But you are a student of the Los Angeles Academy, so you in the beginning were exposed to the, can we call it the last phase of Jeet Kune Do? What
Um, you
last
could,
phase at that time,
yeah,
naturally.
I would say that you'd refer to it as the last phase of Jeet Kune Do during Bruce Lee's lifetime,
Yeah.
because it continued on. Yeah. Again, I started in Dan Inosanto's backyard, 17 and a half. I managed to talk my way into training, and several years later, I found out that there was 15 people whose name was on a list before me attempting to get in. But Dan also he had some background of the Oakland material and the Seattle material, you know. So I kind of myself, I divide it. If first of all, I know what you're saying. It's a continual evolution process, right? So you have the non-classical Kung Fu, and which I even refer to as Janfan Kung Fu when he gave it its name. Then that evolved into Jeet Kune Do, right? The name. And again, it doesn't mean that he wasn't doing things in the Janfan Kung Fu that he was doing in the Jeet Kune Do. It was just the name, okay?
Yep.
So you have this evolutionary path. Then you have the Los Angeles Chinatown group, if you will, right? And then when he went to Hong Kong and they closed the Chinatown school, Dan moved into the backyard, and that's where I began. And then Bruce passed away. But then it continues on from that because it's an evolutionary path. And so when I describe Bruce's evolutionary path, I say you have, the Wing Chun, non-classical Kung Fu, then what he referred to as Janfeng Kung Fu, then what he referred to as Jeet Kune Do, and then while he still left at that period of time from 1970, I'd say, when it was about again doing away with styles completely, you know.
So it was difficult for you to get used to this kind of mentality because in the period of the LA Academy, he had already so many experiences with Jean LaBelle and Wally J and John Rhee. He met many people that he could absorb new stuff from so many people that he had not the same chance in Seattle and Oakland. So was it so hard for you to get used to so many ideas from many martial arts, so many different aspects?
No, actually, it wasn't. What gave me the greatest difficulty was my own understanding of learning, because I had come up through traditional, education systems, both in England and America, which at that time everything was rote repetition. Then I moved into martial arts, which everything was kind of like the same idea. You memorize all of this stuff. And then I suddenly go into this art where I have a teacher telling me, you ask him a question and, well, you have to figure it out, sort it out. So all of those, the physical elements, no, because from day one, I was brought up again with the philosophical foundations or the ideas. If you understand where it comes from, it belongs to no one. It's yours. If you don't, then it belongs to somebody else. So from the day my training began, I was educated on finding technique, helping the principals to find a technique and then illustrating those. What was difficult, and I tell even to my own students now, or when I'm doing a seminar, is I always say, what were the four most dreaded words ever in Jeet Kune Do training? And everybody kind of looks at me and I go, maybe, sometimes, it depends. Because I would be training in the backyard, and then when we opened the Kali Academy, and Dan would be there, and let me just say something really quick here too, because I always run into trouble here. Dan Inosanto was my Sifu, my teacher, my mentor. Sometimes I call him Sifu, sometimes I call him Dan. That is the way I grew up, and I know it's far different now. So I just say that because I get people all the time, you're being disrespectful to Dan because you're not calling him Sifu and Joe. The respect and love is there, okay? But I'm training, again, I come from this other martial art environment. I go into this environment. I'm training, I'm working with a partner on sparring drills or closing or doing something. And I would turn to Dan and I would say, oh, Sifu, if he does this, I should do this, right? Because of that. And he would just look at me and go, sometimes, and then he'd walk away, Or, well, if the guy does this, then I should do this. And he'd just go, it depends. And he'd just leave it. So that was the most difficult thing for me, honestly, because we're used to these nice, neat little packages. He does this, you do this, and here's somebody telling you, maybe you do, maybe you don't. So
have you heard about this ecological approach, non-linear approach?
mhm,
Some of my friends use it in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community.
uh-huh.
Do you think it was something like that
I,
at
I
the
I
time?
think I think so. Again, it's um, when I began training with Dan, he was very much more like a coach, a physical education coach, because that was his degree in university. He was also a physical education teacher at a junior high school. So everything he did was like a coach, not like a classroom teacher, like a coach. And so yes, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I've seen that. Yes, it's and that's where you get the idea or the principle that both of them, it's about problem solving. You know, you're
Yeah.
in a relationship and you have to solve a problem and figure it out. And so yes, I believe that there's certain things that might be linear on certain things, but then it's a very non-linear approach. Yeah.
Were you exposed also to Filipino martial arts at that time, or did you also start teaching Jeet Kune Do and Filipino martial arts also?
Yeah. I was exposed to a certain amount of the Filipino martial arts at the time because Dan and Richard Bustillo, probably maybe a year or so, or maybe even two before I started training with them, they had begun to investigate and look at the Filipino martial arts at that time. So when I began training in the backyard, the classes was like 2.5 hours long, and we do like 2 hours of Jeet Kune Do, and then Dan would do Filipino martial arts at the end. And some of the JKD people would stay, and some of them wouldn't stay. So the primary systems that he was researching when I began training were the Sarada system via Angel Cabales, right, and some of his people. Um, Leo Hiron with but now it's referred to as Bahalana, but it was the Largamano and the Defundo systems. The Now at that time it was just called the Via Bria system of Kali. Those were the fundamental basics that we worked at that particular time. And then when the Filipino Kali Academy opened, you had the JKD and the Filipino arts together. See, what a lot of people don't understand or don't realize is that the prime reason for opening the Filipino Kali Academy was so that Dan and Richard could continue researching the Filipino martial arts, and then Jeet Kune Do would be there as well. But
Yeah,
that's why there was no name Jeet Kune Do on the outside.
yeah, yeah. And there is also in the book of Daniel Santo, the Jeet Kune Do, the art and philosophy, is full of photographs of
Mhm.
images looking for the places and stuff. They show everything.
Yeah.
It's all written there. Yeah, I know that the staff were divided. The program was divided at the time. So,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
um, uh, did you also started teaching something about Jeet Kune Do in what period?
Well, I began the way I moved into teaching. I used the term, it was very organic. Okay. It wasn't like, you got to go study this course, this course. I learned standing side by side with Sifu Dan. Sometimes with his hand on my shoulder like that. Sometimes he'd put his arm around he'd come over, he'd put his arm around my neck and he'd go, okay, see that guy over there? What's he doing wrong? Or what does he need to change? So I'd look and I'd observe and I'd tell him and he'd go, okay, good, go sort it out. And then he started turning over the warm up of the class to me and sometimes different segments of the classes. And then when he would go out of town, um, for some reason, I would run some of the classes. So it was a very organic transition. You know what I mean? It flowed into teaching. And at the same time, we go back to what we were talking about. The passion was there. So I was doing my own research. in sports physiology, kinesiology, exercise science, philosophy, on my own self-education.
Mhm.
So I began doing that, and then I was always traveling with him, assisting him on seminars, and then some of those people asked me to come in between times Dan was there to work with them. So it was just this flow of moving into it. It was very very natural.
Sifu Kent, I'm a real maniac about footwork.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
how much is important the Jeet Kune Do? I know it's I make a question, I ask you, but I know that it's like that. I come from kickboxing. I started in 1984 with kickboxing for 10 years, and later at the Richard Bustillo seminar, I fell in love with the Kali, the Filipino Kali, and then
Hmm.
the Penchakilat later.
Hmm.
Uh, but I never studied the footwork when I used to do a kickboxer.
Ah.
So, in a maniac way, like when I started learning here in Italy from Sifu Santo student,
Hmm.
I never studied so much footwork like in Jeet Kune Do.
Hmm. Yes.
What do you think about it? Is it real so important for everybody? The details, the
Yes.
step and slide, the slide and step, the pendulum, and all that stuff.
It is a vital element. Okay. So the first thing we have to look at is we have to differentiate. This is for combat. This isn't for a combative sport in the ring where I have a certain size. I have to engage an opponent. They have to hit me. I have to hit them. It's not about that. That's a part of it, but it comes from that self defense background. So uh, it's mandatory. I mean, and even in the kickboxing, it's the delivery system for your techniques, right? Okay. If you have poor footwork, then you allow the opponent to dictate the distance and the pace of the fight. And then that gives them the advantage. So it's mandatory for all of these purposes. It allows you to hit, it moves you into position to hit, it takes you away from danger. There are exceptions to everything because people love to say, you say, well, it's footwork, and then somebody always comes up and says, well, what if you get in a fight when you're in the bathroom? And you're like, well, then you're in a fight when you're in the bathroom. I'm not going to go, oh wait, let me get my footwork, and it's but it is an essential part of your training, because it's the delivery system for what you're
Yeah,
doing.
you,
The better
you
your
have
foot, yeah.
you have partitioning also without footwork.
Yes, yeah, yeah. The better your footwork, the less you have to block and parry. Boom, they're gone. You're back and forth. Um, when you get into the individual, whatever genetics of it, if you've got a guy I had one guy who was 375 pounds. Okay, it was not that easy for him to develop smooth flowing footwork just because of his size. He could develop it. So there's the individual that has to be taken into account. But yes, it's super important. You can become, I think you can become too enamored with all of the different names of the footwork, but you have to name it something to explain it to somebody. But the idea is, can you move around just almost as if you were like on a cushion of air just above the ground? Can you move that fluidly? Yeah, I think it's super important.
Do you have some favorite moves with footwork? Something specific that when you teach it, you are in heaven, like heaven.
No, I'm in heaven when I teach it because I have so many different ways in which I can teach it, and so many different. I use different ways to achieve different results. And again, my goal as a teacher is to develop creative, free thinking martial artists that can do the work themselves. So, for example, I have things where I might give them certain footwork patterns that I want them to do, right? Like a three motion. But then I'm going to say, then I tell them, okay, now I want you to change the rhythm of that footwork into three different rhythms. Oh, and then they have to figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
So I have all of those avenues that I use, because it's like, it's not about me. Like I said, it's about them. What do I need them to do? I need them to be able to move so they literally do not have to think from the waist down with regards to their footwork. So how do I get them to that point? Um, you know, and then there's, like, it's oftentimes when I run into people, they go, "Oh yeah, well, Jeet Kune Do, step and slide, push, shuffle, slide, step, side step right, side step left." Yeah, and I go, "Yeah, but what about moving offline? What about triangle stepping? What about rocker shuffle?" Um, all of those elements are part of you developing the ability to move. You know, so yeah, it's just the approach I take in teaching.
Yeah.
So and sometimes I won't even give them a pattern. Sometimes I'll say, we're warming up. We're warming up with footwork. Good. I want you to go 1 to 3. So
Mm.
one piece of footwork. Don't care what it is. And right now 2. Now they don't have to be the same. So maybe 1 is you do a step and slide advance, right? Maybe 2 is you do a side step to the right and a push shuffle. 3 is you do a push shuffle, side step to the left, push shuffle. They have to do the work to think it.
Do you like music?
I love music. My brother was a musician. Um,
Oh,
I love music. Yes.
do you usually stuff from music?
Yes, I do.
Or concept or metaphors to explain something?
Yeah, I try to use all different ones. I'll use musical ones. It's interesting because when you get into like rhythm and pace and tempo, right?
Yeah.
And tempo, a lot of people think of tempo as almost like rhythm, like 1, 2, 3, 4. But when you look at, again, Western fencing, because I have a student that I fence with who fenced for 15 years, and tempo is like a 1 beat is 1 action, 2 tempos, 2 actions. So it's different terminology, but yes, I will talk about staccato rhythm and
Mm.
smooth, steady rhythm and things like that. And a lot of metaphors, like I said, are okay. Imagine you're a hovercraft and you're gliding one again, just off the ground on the floor. Okay, um, maybe I want them to feel what bad footwork feels like. So I'll say, I want you to imagine that you're moving, but you're up to your knees in mud. Okay, how is that going to make you move? Now I want you to move again, like you're on air. Now I want you to move like you're. I'm just trying to think of the ones because I use so many of them that things of that nature. Okay, I want you to move like you've got a 50-pound backpack on your back, right? And as you move, you're going to move with that 50-pound backpack. And then when I tell you, you're going to take 10 pounds out of that and you're going to move. Now you're going to take another 10 pounds out. Now you're going to make another. So do you feel yourself becoming lighter and smoother in your actions? I try to get them to feel those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking about tempo, how could you explain to us the broken rhythm? It's not easy to
It's
to
not
to
easy.
study that, to understand what it means.
Yeah. Well, it's because again, it can become overcomplicated. In order
Yeah.
to break in because in order to break rhythm, you have to establish rhythm first. So, it's if you establish a rhythm of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now you've broken the rhythm. So you can't just jump into say, I'm going to do broken rhythm if you haven't established a rhythm. Because you know what I mean? That's what confuses people. It's you go foot to hand, and you go 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Then you go 1 and now you've broken the rhythm of that. See? And you can break the rhythm in attack, you can break the rhythm in defense, but you have to have a rhythm to break first.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking about broken rhythm, I would like to talk with you about strategy.
Uh-huh.
And speaking about strategy, for me, one of the most beautiful things from Jeet Kune Do is the 5 ways of attack.
Uh-huh.
First of all, do you think that at the time of Sijo Bruce Lee, we could talk about 5 ways of attack, and now with the knowledge that we have with internet, with TV and so many stuff we can see on internet, there can be some new way of attack. There can be 6 or 7. Did you find some other more?
Well, I think it depends how you define the types of attack. Maybe other than, well, you could probably even put hand immobilization attack in there, but I can apply the 5 ways of attack to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
I can apply it to boxing. You know, there's only so many ways that you can do. There might be variations of them, right? But you have a single action, bang. Whether it's direct, whether it's indirect, going in a line. Then you have attack by combination, right? And attack by combination and progressive indirect attack are both compound forms of attack. They require more than one motion, right? Okay. So do they have that? You know, I did an article years ago, somebody just brought it out recently, where I compared the 5 ways of attack from a JKD perspective and then from a Filipino martial arts perspective to show that they exist, that those 5 ways are not the sole property of any one art, be it Jeet Kune Do, be it boxing. It simply depends how you define those ways of attack. So like I said, is I can use attack by drawing in grappling, right?
Yep.
So, you know, what would be the other ways of attack? What would you call them? What would they represent? You know?
Do you think there is other martial arts or combat sport that has 5 ways of attack like in Jeet Kune Do?
I think quite possibly. It depends how you define. Like we go back to that. How do you define what each one of those ways of attack is? Like I've seen videos where in the MMA now that somebody will knock the person's hand out the way and then hit them with a hit and land.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, well, see, they're using hand immobilization attack. I don't really consider that hand immobilization because they haven't immobilized it. It's more like a use of a beat parry from fencing. Where you beat and then you hit.
John Jones used to do that, and also Conor McGregor used to do that.
Yeah. Now, boxing has the 5 ways of attack. People go, well, it doesn't have hand immobilization. It doesn't in a lot of
Lomachenko does it.
But if you go back, and I have some boxing books from the 1920s and 30s, and there are photographs in there where it talks about when you slip to the inside of if we're a match lead, and if I slip to the inside of the opponent's lead hand, I smother their rear hand with my hand to prevent them from being able to use it. They call it pinning or stopping. So that's a way of immobilizing that hand while you're doing something. So it exists. It exists. I just honestly think sometimes people they want to make too much of a big deal over something that's very, very simple and straightforward, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, but they do exist, yes. Yeah. I've seen these ways of attack exist in some of the form of penjok silat that my best friend Sifu Magda does. I've seen them exist in there. So they're not the sole property of anybody. Nobody owns it, you know.
Did you write something about the 5 ways of attack, but not in martial arts, as a way to face the life?
Yes, yeah.
Something like that. Some kind of Arthur Schopenhauer book, The Art of Obtain to be right. The Art to be right. I don't know how's
Yeah,
the title in English.
sure.
Or also the book of five rings by Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah,
That you read it and you can apply the same stuff to the life, not just for
yes.
this word or for the fighting.
Yeah, in fact, there is a section in the book where I do that, and I talk about, it's called the main section is getting into the water, and then this one is called kicking into action or kick into action, and it's all about action, you taking action. Now, what types of actions do you take? A simple or a single or a compound action? So sometimes in life, when you're doing something, you got to go straight at it, straight on, no deviation, no stopping, bang, straight there. Sometimes, in order to get to this final part, like a straight and a cross, to finish with the hook, well, sometimes in your education or your learning, you have to go to this spot first, then continue on to this next spot in order to get where you want to be in the end. That's just like an attack by combination. I go here and here to get here. Sometimes you might have to start to go in one direction for your career, knowing that you're going to change to go to this other direction where you want to end up. That's progressive indirect attack. You start off, you know where you want to end up, but you know you need to go in this direction first and maybe not even finish it and then go there, and then sometimes you have to open yourself up and let things come to you, which is attack by drawing. The only one I really haven't sorted out, or I didn't really get a really good grip on, was the hand mobilization attack,
Yeah,
because it just doesn't seem to. I mean, I'm sure people could come up with explanations, but it doesn't
yes,
seem to fit well.
I agree.
Mhm.
Um, let's imagine we are watching two people fight on a
Uh-huh.
ring or somewhere,
Mhm.
and you start to realize that one of them is moving in a certain way. How would you say that he's from Jeet Kune Do? How someone can recognize a JKD player
Well, I think
from
there,
the
yeah,
wolf work, from the Baijong position,
I think,
from
yeah, yeah, I think there are what we call characteristics of movement that might that might uh, tend to show that, kind of like you said, whether it's the Baijong position, the type of footwork they use, how they're using the footwork. Like it's very easy for me if I'm watching somebody who's like a competitive MMA and they're in the ring and they're moving like this, bang, and they're moving. But then I can see somebody who's they don't move unless they want to move or they have to move. You know, this guy moves, they move. You know, so it's 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 easy. It's not that it's difficult, but again, MMA has morphed into its own thing, right? When it started, you remember everybody used to say, "Oh, like Dana White would say, oh, he's doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, he's doing Muay Thai now, he's doing boxing now," right? And now they just go, he's just hitting, he's MMA. Um, the are they thinking of, for example, if I see the guy who's just cutting through the guy's weapons each time, not thinking that they have to go over their weapon, like a boxer, they'll turn over their weapon to score with a certain area of the glove, but they're going to crash right through, just you know, like that JKD man, he's going to cut through the opponent's weapon or the tools. Um, if I see somebody that has a beautiful or a really non-telegraphic kick, whether it's a side kick or a hook kick, they don't pull their front leg back before they kick to get more power. They get their full body into the tool. So I can look, and maybe they just have aspects of it.
Mhm.
Because again, it doesn't belong to Jeet Kune Do, you know?
And I link to this. I would like to ask you
Uh-huh.
if you dedicate yourself 2 days to watch again all the Bruce Lee movies. Can you tell, and also the TV series?
Uh-huh.
Can you tell me, Claudio, you want to really look what JKD is like?
Uh-huh.
Watch this. Do you have
Well,
something in mind that for you is perfectly JKD?
um, I would tell you for overall Jeet Kune Do, because I watched it before I ever got involved in Jeet Kune Do, and then I watched it with my teacher Dan at his house a couple of times on video, and that is the Longstreet television episode called "The Way of the Intercepting Fist," right? And I like I said, I watched it with Dan, okay, and he Dan would be he'd love to watch it. He'd go, Chris, this is just what it was like learning with Bruce. He said, like, you remember the scene? There's a scene where the guy's getting upset and Bruce walks around him and he goes, "Where am I?" Right? If you remember,
Yeah.
and like Bruce is over there and the blind guy goes, "There," and Bruce goes, "No, your thoughts are wrong." Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm watching that with Dan, and Dan goes, "I love this." He goes, "See this?" He goes, "Only with me, it wasn't like that." He goes, "With me, it was okay, Dan. I'm going to show you this one more time, and if you get it, fine, and if you don't, fine." So he goes, "That's the way he would teach. That do this, don't do that. How's this feel?" So I think, and the philosophy that's in there too. I think for a clear, if I had to choose one thing, I'd say, dude, it's right there. You know,
Yeah.
the others
Yeah.
the others are more cinematic examples of things. Like I can watch
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
different movies, pick up
I
different
really
things.
like the Way of the Dragon. There is the
Uh,
fighting with the Bob Wall
yes, yes,
in the countryside. I really
yes,
like that one also.
yes,
He
yes,
stopped the G Tech many times.
yeah,
It's really beautiful also,
yeah,
but the long skate is perfect.
yeah. I like that. In the movie Enter the Dragon, yeah, it's great, and I love the fight scenes. But I often tell people when we're talking about it, my one of my favorite scenes is the scene where Bruce is teaching that young man. You know,
Yeah.
because it has the perfect philosophical thing about emotional content in there. And a lot of Westerners, when they see that, or they don't they don't get it, because in when Bruce, the guy comes up and Bruce goes, "Kick me," right? So this guy, he launches out this beautiful side kick, holds it out, perfectly poised, right, balanced and everything, like he's posing, and he
Yeah.
gets into trouble for it. What was that, right? We need emotional content. Do it again. So now the guy's upset. So now his attitude is, I'm going to just drill him with this kick, right? So he goes, whoop, and Bruce moves away. And again, he gets into trouble. I said emotional content, not anger. And then he gets the guy moving and the guy kicks. I love that because, the first time he's trying to be all showboaty and show how his form is and it's perfect, he gets into trouble for it. Then he gets upset. So now he was going to really smash him, gets into trouble for it. Finally gets the idea of really being himself and putting himself in his motion. So that's one of my favorite scenes of a movie. But yeah,
Sifu Kent,
yes.
please help us to find a way to apply Jeet Kune Do in sparring without going to the hospital every night, without finger jab and stomp the knee and stuff like that. How can we spar I stopped teaching Jeet Kune Do in 2005.
Uh-huh.
So I'm dedicating myself only to Kali and Penchak Silat.
Uh-huh.
But
Mhm.
if I wanted to spar with someone using some kind of Jeet Kune Do with stop kick,
Yeah,
the trapping,
yeah.
the elbows and stuff like that, how can I do that without hurting each other? Did you
The
find a way
bottom
to do
line,
that?
the bottom line is that you can't. In terms of, let me not correct it, but explain it. You can only move towards an all-out street fight so far, right? Okay, because like you said, without going to the hospital, yeah, okay, you're going to kick me, bang, I'm going to break your knee. That's not going to teach us anything, you know. Yeah, I'm going to stick my finger in your eye. You're going to get blind in an eye, whatever. That doesn't work. Our training will be put on hold or maybe even stop, you know?
Yeah.
So you can only approach it so close. I've been doing the Filipino martial arts for the same amount of time, 50 years. And I take the same idea. Saying that we're going to do it that way, it's like saying, oh, Claudio, you and I, we're going to work on knife fighting. So here's a butcher knife. I'm going to have a butcher knife. And we're just going to go. And what we learn, we learn. What we'll learn is we'll go to the hospital, maybe we'll die. We'll learn, to call the ambulance to get there, because you can only approach an all-out fight to a certain degree. There's no way around it, you know. And anybody that says you are, I would never be training with them, because that's going to get you hurt. So this is where you have the training. You train on equipment to develop the power and the speed of that stop kick until it is full out there. Bruce trained his kick, his punch, to where he had 100% confidence in that punch or that kick. He knew what he could do. But you can't do it. You can't go out there. There's a story Alan Joe related to me and us when we were when we were the members of the nucleus. And he said James Lee made a headgear with steel bars on the front, kind of like those kendo headgears, for working with Bruce. And he brought the headgear in, and he said, "Oh, Sifu, I made this headgear. I'm going to put it on. Punch me. I got to test it." And Bruce goes, "I don't want to punch it." And James goes, "No, we've got to test it. I'll put it on. You punch it." Bruce goes, "I do not want to punch it." And James kept saying, "No, we've got to do it." He goes, "Punch it." And he goes, and Alan goes, Bruce goes, wham! And he hits this mask and he caves the front of the mask in, which is metal bars. He caves it in so it like touches James's face. And he goes, "I told you I didn't want to punch it." He knew that he could hit. He knew he had 100% confidence in that strike. And he trained to develop that 100%. But then you realize you can't do 100% in sparring. It's impossible. People
Yep.
will get hurt. It would be like again, you're doing the Brazilian jiu-jitsu and the grappling, and the guy puts that key lock on you, and then just cranks your arm full out, and it'll tear everything out of your shoulder. Yeah, well, that's reality. That's a
Yeah.
stupid way of looking at things, you know. So you train it. One of the things I talk about to my students and when I'm doing seminars, and because I try to help them get an understanding of Bruce's mindset with relation to training, because it was so fresh when I began training. Now it's been through the years and there's been all this changing and things going on, but it was right there. And one of the things I tell them is, we'll talk about like the lead hook kick, right?
Yep.
Bam, lead hook kick from a stationary position or moving up. But I say, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand Bruce's mindset, because this is how it was related to me. He said, Dan said, Bruce's mindset was, you see that guy's rear hook kick? Well, I'm going to train my lead hook kick till it's stronger and more powerful than their rear hook kick. You see that guy's rear cross? I'm going to train my lead straight punch till it's stronger and more powerful than their rear cross. And then he just went out and did the work that allowed him to do that. But that was his mindset. His mindset wasn't, well, I'm going to use that hook kick as a scoring point. No, he trained it that way. So I use the analogy to my students. If you train your hook kick to, for want of a better term, 100% of your genetic power and speed, and then you choose to only use that kick with 50%, you can do it. If you train that kick up to 50%, you can't go up to 100. You see?
Yeah.
So that's the mindset I want people to understand with regards to the training. Bang. We were talking about it in class last night because I was working them on some basics, very basic body mechanics, hip torque, and everything. I was saying, Dan held a focus glove for Bruce for an hour and a half, 90 minutes, while Bruce worked on one kick. And he would make all these minor variations, and he'd use Dan for feedback. He goes, okay, I'm gonna shift my hip now. Tell me how it feels. And then he'd wham, and he'd get the kick. And Dan go, well, that feels, he goes, that's really strong. He goes, okay, I'm gonna try something else. Wham, and Dan goes, Jesus, that's stronger. 90 minutes on one kick. So you have the belief in, what you can do, what your body can do. But the other stuff is, the safety factor has to be there. I shake my head when I hear people say, because like I said, I related to the Filipino martial arts. I was like, okay, well, you want to learn how to fight? Do it like Floro Villabria did. You get the stick, you go in a ring, no armor, no nothing. You're going to be a lot more careful than when you're all geared up with the armor, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, here's Western fencing. It's a combative sport. We've got the armor on. Okay, this is dueling. We've got a rapier and we've got a dagger. No armor, no protection, no rules. Very, very different. Very different.
Yep. Last question. What's the situation of Jeet Kune Do right now? What do you think about it, and what do you hope for the future?
Oh, that's a loaded question. What do I think about the state of it? I think it's in a massive state of disarray. I believe there's so many things going on. I believe there's a large amount of revisionism of JKD history. People are trying to rewrite it, and basically it usually is to fit their agenda of what they're doing. And I have to say too that some of these people who are reciting this material, they're simply reciting what they've been given. They don't know any better. No, so they're
just
they just the party line. The fragmentation that occurred after Bruce died, because Bruce was a very strong gravitational field, and he held things together. Well, that stayed for a while, and it started to wobble, and then it becomes about real estate. Who has the most students? Who has the most schools? Again, you're right, I'm right, you're wrong. You don't know anything about it. You were trained by this. You weren't trained by this person. You were trained by that person. I look at the person. I don't look at who they were trained by, because I've seen people who are, who were trained directly by anybody, Dan, Ted, and I'm just making this up, but that their knowledge is not that great. And I've met somebody who's been trained by somebody maybe two people down who has an incredible amount of knowledge. If they spent as much time seeking commonality of desire and what they want to do with the art instead of all the separative stuff, I think it would be in a lot better state. somebody once asked me on another podcast, what would I like to see happen? And I said, which is the same here, I'd like to see Jeet Kune Do resume what I consider its rightful place in the pantheon of martial arts, where I believe that it should exist.
Yeah.
Will that happen? I don't know, because of all of this fragmentation. Look, when I was in Italy, and I mentioned to you because I love
But
Italy. I love.
when was last time you came to
Oh,
Italy?
I think it
What year?
was 2000, maybe 18, 19, somewhere around there. Um, but I've been there a number of times, and I love. But when I got there this time, this one group was bad mouthing this other group, and in the magazines, and back and forth, and I just got sick and tired of it, and I wrote something that I posted on my Facebook that you guys need to just shut up and try and work together, or even if you don't like the person, just offer mutual respect. I don't have to like everybody in Jeet Kune Do, but it was, and then I started seeing it in all other countries, but um, it just seems like there's always this, because it's about real estate. It's about who's got the
Yeah.
most students, who's got the most money, and so, man, will it ever be where I would like to see it be? As days go by, I tend to see that less and less. But I can only do what I can do to share the art and the philosophy the way I believe it should be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many times the problem is not with the teachers, but with the students.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how this works. Uh, is there something like the nucleus or the foundation is still alive that works to spread Jeet Kune Do in some way?
No. No. The nucleus, when it started, the nucleus was the board of directors of the Bruce Lee Educational Foundation, right? The nucleus was the group of us who were the board of directors. No, because when that started, the idea was good,
Yeah.
but it became again this thing of first of all, there was a huge misinformation and propaganda campaign against it by other groups because they believed that that the nucleus was going to start making instructors and telling everybody who was an instructor that they had to come and get recognized by them. It had nothing to do with any of that whatsoever. The whole goal of the nucleus, the foundation, was simply to give the public the clearest and most accurate view of what Bruce Lee was doing during his lifetime, not what anybody else was doing. That's something different. See, so is there anything like that? I know that there's different people have started their own different groups, but no, and nor will I don't think it will ever happen again.
The problem with martial arts is that in some way when somebody wants to start doing the marketing stuff, it needs some control on these people, because otherwise I heard the story and the articles, and in some that shelf it's for Jeet Kune Do and Filipino martial arts. In some of those books it's written that in the beginning many people started to teach Jeet Kune Do without any Jeet Kune Do background,
right?
And so the need to create something between the nucleus, the first teachers, the friends, and direct student, first generation students. But then, especially, I can talk about that in Italy. Many little associations started to create instructors after a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And then the instructors start another association because they want to start at the epic of that pyramid. And so they start again there. And so the knowledge becomes, I don't want to say bad words. Okay.
Yes.
And so the art becomes BS.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what you just described. Is exactly what I saw. First of all, nobody cared about becoming an instructor when I was in JKD, when I was first growing up. I didn't get my instructor certificates until 8 years, 9 years after I'd been with Dan. And they were just stuck in a drawer in his office. And he said, there's something in there for you. But it seems to me just what you described is that somebody is an instructor, right? Now, this somebody may not even have any background other than maybe they were at the LA school for a month or 2 months. And so what happened was in the early years, none of that existed, okay? Because there was just Dan and Richard, and there was the group, and there was the Collie Academy. And then all of a sudden, these guys start coming out of the woodwork, and you're like, well, who are these guys? Who are they? Well, they were at the Oakland school for a month or 2 months. I'm just making these up, right? And all of a sudden, they've created an association. They make instructors. And then just what you said, and I really saw that over in Italy, is they make somebody an instructor. They immediately start creating courses to make other people instructors. So that's a thing. I still have to look at the individual, because, like I said, there's guys with knowledge out there. There are guys with knowledge on Jeet Kune Do that have never been in a Jeet Kune Do school, but they know it. They know it. They've trained it. They understand it. They just don't have that. So yeah, the way you described it is exactly what I ran into. The other thing is again, JKD history. A lot of people don't know that in 1980 there was another society that was formed, because I was on the group, the board of directors of the group of that. It was called the JKD Society, and it had Dan and Richard and myself and Tim Tackett and Jerry Poteet. And there was a whole group of us, and the idea was that we were going to let these people know, because we saw people in different countries around the world, Club Bruce Lee, all this stuff, that we were going to, that people could contact the JKD Society and say, is this person legitimate or not? And we could say yes or no, or we don't know who they are. That began in 1980, and it ended within a year, because for the reasons that it ended. And so when the nucleus came, my hope was that it wasn't going to suffer the same fate as the JKD Society, but it ended up suffering the same fate. So, there was, like I said, people don't realize that there was a group that was started in 1980 for the specific purpose of correcting all of that misinformation that's out there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Claudio. I just
here. This is. I must be sincere. This is one of the reasons I stopped. Not training, but teaching. I was into an association who brought first the AKEA. First, they were the first to bring JKD in Italy with Bustillo, Richard Bustillo, then Bob Breen. There was a Nino Pilla and Sifu Casmagda, Danilo Santo. There many.
Mm-hmm.
And until I was in that association in the program, I had the JKD phase besides the Penchak Sirat and the Kali.
Mm-hmm.
When I went away from that association in 2005 to train the Dutch Pukulan, I stopped the JKD because it was a mess. People fighting each other. It was like in Wing Chun. It's a strange destiny.
Yeah.
Like Wing Chun and JKD has almost the same problem fighting each other. It's so stupid behavior.
Exactly. I know many people who have taken the same path as you. They're done the JKD, then they've done something else, maybe the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, maybe the Filipino martial arts, maybe several. Yeah, and then they just hit a point and they go, you know what, I'm tired of all of this bullshit, excuse my French, but and they've just gone away from it. Yeah, and that to me is what's so sad about
Yeah.
what's happened. Yeah, it's this art. I love this art. This philosophy has given me so much. I tell people I consider myself one of the most blessed people on this planet. The people that I've met, the things that I've been able to do, and like I said, it means so much to me that when I see, all of this attitude and
Yeah.
that, yeah, it does, and
Guys
and
with
sometimes,
20 years old already teaching Jeet Kune Do
yeah,
after 2-3 weeks weekend.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
So I
Well,
decided, okay, Jeet Kune Do is here, Jeet Kune Do is here, and I can do my Kali empty hands is
yes,
some kind of my Jeet Kune Do. I call it in another way,
uh-huh.
but I don't want to stay in that community. It's a pity because it could be really beautiful.
Yes, yeah, I know it could be. That's the thing, so for myself, all I can do is what I can do, which is like when we're talking, and I said, you know, if people want to talk to me and they say, well, what do you think about this person? They say, well, what do you think about this person? I say, I don't,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
go, I don't, I just don't think about them, so so all I can do is do my best. There's a saying that says some debts cannot be repaid; they can only be acknowledged, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that with regards to Jeet Kune Do, both via Dan, but Bruce. They've given me stuff that I can never repay. The only way that I can attempt to repay it is by sharing what I do and how I do it with the best of my capacities to people. And then some people are going to take it and some people are not. Okay, that's fine. And some people are going to agree with me and some people are not. And that's fine. We're not a bunch of little chewing gums that sit in a box all that look like the
Yeah.
same, right? So
Sifu Kent, I told you some minutes ago it was like last question. Maybe I lied because I
that's
wanted
fine.
to ask
It's okay. It's
future,
okay.
your future project. Do you have some seminars, workshop around the world, Europe, Italy, or somewhere
Um,
else?
I'm working on setting up some more. Um, if you look on my website, because I redesigned my website, I have my dynamic personal liberation, which deals with my book, the one we
For
talked
the
about.
for the Sifu Kent website, you can watch the description under this video. There are all the infos.
Okay, and then I have Jeet Kune Do. So I have the Chris Kent consultancy. So I work with either one of those aspects with people. So for the JKD, I can work, and I don't just have to work with JKD factions, but I work with them on in professional basis on curriculum design, technical material, training methodology, philosophical foundations, um, and I do that. And then on the dynamic personal liberation, I just started a brand new YouTube channel that's called Chris Kent Think Like Bruce Lee, which, as I said, it's not about thinking the same thoughts. It's taking the material from my books
Open
and
mind.
other.
How to open your mind.
Yes, yeah. So I have that. I'm doing another book that I can't say what it's about right now because it's my super secret one, whatever. Um, but it's not a technique book, but it will be a completely different take with regards to things in the JKD world. So I'm working on. I'd love to go back to Europe and come over and work and I thought this time that maybe looking at it because sometimes it's very hard when I go to Italy, like the last time I was in Setse, right? It's very hard for people. I had one person come like 600 kilometers, so it's very hard for people to travel and stay. So I thought maybe what I might like to do is go and do smaller workshops at different places through Italy, so
Yeah.
that like if I did one in Napoli, then the people from there could come. And then if I did one in Milan, it's easier for people to just do that. So I'm looking at that,
I heard something like, you give a seminar in Rome. Where? Oh, uh, I'm sorry, I'm Roma North. You give a seminar in Roma South. I cannot come because it's too far. Stuff
Yes,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Italy, we are divided in factions. Not
right.
everybody don't go to the seminar of the other faction.
Yes,
Or
yes,
if some student wants to come, he has to ask permission. He kicks away the student that came, so he
yes,
got to do it in silent, like a spy, stuff like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
because
yeah.
he has no permission to do that. It works like that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. See, that's what I found when I was over there. That this group wouldn't go to this seminar because this is this group. What about just getting the knowledge? I will never tell any of my students, don't go to see Dan, don't go to see Cass, don't, because every one of them has something that can maybe help make them better.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
again, there's a saying that uh, uh, what is it? Confident people educate people. People who don't confident indoctrinate people.
Perfect. Like a
Or that,
sect.
yeah,
Like a
secure
sect.
people. Yeah, secure people. Educate people. Insecure, indoctrinate. So that you can only listen to me. You can, and I have seen it in America. I've seen it in England. So it's not there, but yeah, and it's instead of just saying, you know what, you know, uh, I'm going to go because I can get something. I've been to seminars with Hickson Gracie when he was in California. Why? Because I'm a beginner, good, or in terms of that, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to go different people. I go work with Cass, like I said. Why not? Yeah, it's sort of like you said. This is my group. Don't go to that group. Why? Why?
If you go to the concert of Pink Floyd, there is nobody, no other. There is no Led Zeppelin member that says, "Oh, you cannot go there because
Yes,
you buy
exactly.
those records and you don't feel, you don't hear my records anymore." It's
That's
only in I think it's only martial arts stuff like that.
yeah.
It's
I
incredible.
I think so. I think so. And it's very much of a shame because the knowledge that's there, the knowledge that could be shared. One of the things I always do anytime I do a seminar is I tell the people who are at the seminars, look, I'm going to share material with you. Some you might like, some you won't like. I don't ask you to think like I do. I don't ask you to agree with me. I don't ask you to think like I do. All I ask you to do is think. That's it. Bang. And then here's the information. And if you like it, fine. And if you don't like it, fine. Um, that's well, why? Like you said, it's silly. It's silly. Just think how much better the JKD world would be if that attitude did not exist.
Okay, okay. Sifu Kent,
Yes.
last question. This time is,
Okay.
I swear, it's the last one.
I don't
How
mind. I'm enjoying
can we
having with you. So,
how can we find your book on Amazon? The name
yes.
and the tags. How can you write Christopher Kent? How to liberate yourself?
Oh, it's just here. I'll hold it up. It's it's liberate yourself. How to think like Bruce Lee.
Okay,
I
okay,
mean,
okay.
and if you just go, like if you go to Amazon and you typed in, um, you know, Chris Kent, think like Bruce Lee, it will pull it up. It will come up right away. So
Perfect.
yeah,
For everything, you got the description and you got the email, the website, everything under in the description of this video.
okay,
Sifu Kent, I would like to thank you for accepting my invitation. It was really a pleasure. I wrote to you a couple of days ago, I think,
yeah, yeah,
and we talked about Italian food.
Yeah.
And so I asked you to come. It was really a surprise to meet you on Facebook and have you here in so
Oh,
few days. It was wow. I'm
well,
so lucky this week.
well, I'm glad. It's been a pleasure and a joy talking with you and sharing with you and I appreciate what you're doing with the martial arts and with JKD. So yeah, it was great. You know, it's just one of those things that occurs, right? And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the heavens line up or whatever. You know.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, good, good.
Thanks again. And thank you for following us. Stay here once again next time. And thank again to Sifu Christopher Kent.
Sì,
Thank
grazie
you.
mille, grazie mille. Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you.